All right, everybody, here we go. Welcome to another episode of Movies Are Dead. We are back better than ever with Vanilla Sky today, Boris.
That's
How do you
right.
feel, Boris? How do you feel about this one?
Feel great. I haven't seen this movie in 10 years, I think.
Yeah, me
Ever,
too.
ever since the last time I saw it was in psychology class in high school.
You guys watched this in psychology?
Yeah, for some reason. I think the teachers went on an easy week. So yeah, we split it up over two different classes. And
Oh, was this like a heavily edited movie
no,
when you saw it?
she just got the DVD and she just played it for us. Well, I think I don't know. People in Mexico are just, for the most part, are just not as, I don't know. They're not as peevish and not as worried about nudity
Yeah.
and sex as they might be here.
Yeah.
Also, yeah, I mean, like, I don't know how kids are here because they didn't go to high school here, but over there wasn't like a lot of like, sometimes when you're kids and you see like a naked woman on screen, you start like, you can't handle it. It's uncomfortable, right? So kids start like making jokes,
Yeah.
and they like start
Catcalling,
yeah,
inappropriate
all
behavior.
kinds of weird. Like when you're that age, you can't handle that kind of thing, right?
No, you can't.
But I don't know. When my classmates, they were fine with it. They were just like chill. But anyway, I haven't seen this movie in 10 years, and I was worried that I wouldn't like it as much as I did before. Previously, they would play it on TV every 2 weeks, and I would watch it every time they played it, and I loved it.
Yeah.
I'm glad to say that I still think this is a great movie.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Well, I have not seen this movie in 10 years. I think I rewatched it in high school. That was the last time I watched it. Um, I had seen it before. I actually saw this movie in the movies when it came out.
Wow.
And it was like no, it was amazing back then from what I remember. And I remember watching it on the big screen. It was just very bizarre. I remember not understanding what was happening till the very end.
Mm-hmm.
And even then I couldn't really configure the ending. But I mean, I always go back to that movie though, as in like I hadn't seen it in 10 years, but when I came back to it, it was like I was like, oh, I can see why this movie is so controversial and it's so split down the middle, whether you like it or hate it. Um, and rewatching it again for the show, I couldn't help but think, man, this movie is like it still holds up even though like some of the dialogue in the script is a little funky at times, doesn't make sense. It's a little bit too like early 2000s, late 90s ish.
That's
Like
just like Cameron Crowe. That's his.
kind of, yeah.
He's very specific to his
Very, yeah. But
time.
other than that, like the script, the story is so like intricate.
Yeah.
Like I can't imagine the prep he had to do for this movie because it like the like just the shot list, the location list, how to keep track of like where we are in the story,
Yeah.
it's very well made, I think. And this is a not interview. This is a remake of the Abre los Ojos, right? The
Yeah,
Spanish
by
movie.
Alejandro Amenabar.
There you go. Yeah, with Penelope Cruz in the original version.
Yeah, playing the same role in this one.
Yeah, and what they do, what they do with the original one and the new one, I think obviously it's more Americanized. It's way more pop culture driven than the original. I think the original is more of like a psychological thriller, like
Sort of, yeah.
very low budget, not B movie, but very low budget. I enjoyed that one. I remember when I saw that one. But this one, it's more, it's very like the obviously it's going to be like an American movie because it's by Cameron Crowe, but the amount of pop culture in this movie and the
Mm-hmm.
little things you have to pick up on are like it's crazy. It's like the amount of Easter eggs and little like trivia you find in the movie throughout the film is so like if you're a pop culture person, like you'll love this movie.
I think what's the word? It really is emblematic of how much our lives, especially now, are made up of the culture we consume, movies,
Yeah.
the music, books, TV, and we don't realize how much of our lives are made up of that stuff. But when it comes down to it, it can often be the source of our greatest joy or melancholy of emotional expression.
Yeah.
So yeah, when this will obviously be a spoiler filled episode, but at the end, when Tom Cruise as David jumps off the building, he sees his whole life flash before his eyes, and
Yeah.
so much of his life is made up of music and movies, paintings, pictures.
Yeah. There's those montages that Cameron Crowe uses in this movie. And you mentioned the ending and the amount of pop culture in there. But I also think of the sex scene too, where he kills Julie Gianni,
Yeah,
like that, you know, like the amount of imagery he uses in that, like as he's killing her and as he's having sex with her. And, I assume he ejaculates, but it's just like, it's such a riveting moment of the amount of imagery and the sounds. It's overwhelming. And, like, yeah, like some of the imagery, like when he jumps off the building at the end, or leading up to it when he's in the elevator, and
yeah,
Noah Taylor's character is like explaining like what's going on to him, and how he pulled all these things from like movies, and mostly movies and like music, like the Jules and Jim poster,
yeah,
the breathless poster,
right.
you know and like, I don't know. I think Cameron Crowe really did a great job of translating this story to the American way. I don't know how to explain, but like to make it so American, like like hell, like Steven Spielberg, it like comes out in this movie briefly, like
Yeah,
just as a party guest,
yeah, it's
and
weird. You barely see him. He's like wearing a hat. He's like
yeah,
ducking down when he like
yeah.
shakes Tom
And
Cruise's
he's
hand.
like, "Happy birthday, you son of a bitch!" And I'm like, what the hell? Like, even the cameos are so strange. Like Spielberg is in it. Like
Tommy
Tommy
Lee.
Tommy Lee. Like, like, like all these brief moments where you're like, "Wait a minute, is that who I think it is?"
Yeah.
And man, I mean, talk about being at the height of your powers. Like Cameron Crowe. Like Jerry Maguire, Almost Famous, Vanilla
Hmm.
Sky, like that to me is such an American trilogy, like modern American trilogy. Like it carries this like weird like optimism of
Hmm.
American culture. Yet they're three different movies at three different like times and space, but they're all like about America in some way, you know?
Definitely. Yeah, he's guess he's a very particular kind of filmmaker
Yeah.
because he's not afraid to be sentimental or corny. And there are moments in all of his movies that are very corny, but the thing is, it doesn't matter because I think, yeah, especially now, we're so surrounded by irony and cynicism that it's nice to have someone, even who's not making movies anymore, really,
I know.
to have someone in the recent past who is just so unafraid to be sentimental and expressive. Because filmmakers, they're always trying to be cool, even if they're making movies that are not very cool at all, because they always are afraid to be made fun of for being sentimental or being too emotional or just, being afraid of being called, sort of, basic, corny, run of the mill Hallmark card making
Yeah.
ass motherfuckers. And Cameron Crowe has always been very obvious about who he is and what he wants to express emotionally in his movies. And even something like this, like you said, the Spanish version was more like a psychological thriller. This is more of a character piece
Yeah.
that is sort of expressing the loss of someone who could have been your soulmate, or at least someone who you could have loved for a very long, been in love with for a very long time. And it's about wanting, it's about the desire to have that kind of love. And it's just not this movie. This kind of movie doesn't really get made anywhere, especially not at this level. The budget was like $70 million.
Yeah. And dude, I couldn't, like, I remember watching it 10 years ago and just being like, "Oh, it's a Paramount movie, big studio." But now I'm like, how
Yeah.
the hell did he get this thing financed and made by Paramount? Like that's how like big Cameron Crowe was at the time, like writing off of Jerry Maguire and Almost Famous. Like they were like, yeah, let's go for it. Like like $70 million budget, dude. To the opening shot to clear out Times Square,
Yeah.
pre 9/11. Like it's
Anyway,
insane.
yeah, a big part of that was also Tom Cruise. This was
There
like
you go.
what's
Yeah, Tom Cruise. Yeah. What was he coming off of? Like MI3, right?
no, not yet. That's not yet. Yeah. I think that was
MI2.
after actually.
Okay.
So let me see. Let's see.
He Eyes Wide
No,
Shut.
Scott doesn't one. Right. So yeah, 1999 was Eyes Wide Shut,
Yeah.
Magnolia.
Magnolia. Yeah.
Next year was Mission Impossible 2.
There you go. Yeah.
And then, yeah, 2001 was Vanilla Sky.
Yeah.
And
Like Tom Cruise in this movie is so like riveting and so like he's not the way he is now. I don't know how to describe it. He's still like Tom Cruise, like where you look at him and you go like, man, that's a movie star.
yeah,
Like putting like all of it. He still does that, obviously, but as he's gotten older, I can see like he's kind of like not turned down the volume a bit, but he's kind of like it's kind of like receded a bit. Whereas in like Vanilla Sky, you see him and like every take, like he's putting it out there. Now Tom Cruise, unfortunately, is a beam, and people, make fun of him, and I'm like, this guy's literally like giving it his all. Like specifically the sex scene where he kills Julie Gianni, like the amount of
uh,
force and like the anger like he's conveying, is insane.
yeah, he's like a James Dean level type of expression where it's just like it's very unrestricted. It's not constrained at all. He just
Yeah.
puts it out there, and it comes off sometimes as I don't know if it's being hammy, but or not being genuine or not giving a good performance. It just seems like he's really in it. He just really tries. He goes all the way,
Yeah.
and he never underplays anything, obviously.
No, yeah.
Uh, but yeah, like as you said, now he's turned into sort of he's realized that you can't really keep being a movie star and make these kinds of movies where you play a human being like Jerry Maguire or something
Yeah.
like that, or Rain Man or something.
Yeah. Rain Man. Yeah.
He's realized that he has to make big budget action movies that cost $200 million
Yeah.
that play in the middle of the summer to like hundreds of
I don't-
thousands of theaters.
yeah.
Now it's very different from back then. Like you said, this was a movie made by a studio, Paramount, for $70 million about a guy. It's like it's about a character who gets lost in this like science fiction nightmare, and that's
Yeah.
not nothing that gets made anymore. Maybe on Netflix, but then it's like really shitty and it has
It
all this
could,
like
it could, this movie, if it was remade, it would be like a half-hour Black Mirror episode or something.
Mhm.
And then,
That's right, and it would lose a lot of its emotional
yeah,
power.
yeah, it's like I mean, just the plot of the movie where it's just like a playboy CEO who runs a company, magazines, publishing house. He has a board that controls 50%, and he's like vying for control of the 51%. It's always a battle. He's living in the shadow of his father.
Mhm.
And just like how I like how Cameron Crowe uses the theme of like women and sex. And you think this movie is going one way where it's like, oh, he's a playboy and he's going from relationship to relationship, but he learns the hard way. And as they
Right.
say in the end, it's the little things that count. Those moments, those small moments where he chose something over something else. Like when he gets in the car with Julie Gianni, and Sophia is like later on in the movie, she's like, "Why did you get in the car?
It's
Why?"
this movie is a large part about the small choices we make that wind up defining our lives, which sounds
Yeah,
kind of cliche, but and I guess it's true sometimes. And we don't even realize that those small, tiny choices affect us in a way that
yeah,
it's gargantuan. It's huge.
yeah. It's like a ripple effect,
Yeah.
you know. And I like the way you know Cameron Crowe, he uses like the set design, like how
Mhm.
he decorates David Ames, Tom Cruise's house, the smashed guitar, I think it's the Duke Ellington trumpet hologram, right?
Yeah, like his whole life is. Like, I mean, you could tell that he probably like his character hired an interior decorator to design his apartments
Yeah.
because it's all a bit too clean. It's a bit too manufactured. It's not. It doesn't seem. It seems personal with
Yeah.
all his posters. And I mean, like, do you think that David Ames is the guy who like watches Breathless every now and then?
Yeah, I do. Dude, I want to believe that. I think he did.
Sure,
No, he
maybe.
did. He did. He's too much of a romantic. He's too much of a, he
But it's
didn't.
not a romantic movie though. Breathless isn't a romantic movie.
Jules and Jim, though. Jules and Jim.
Sure,
I was
sort
thinking
of.
that. But
Sort
he,
of.
like, I want to believe he does. I think he does. I think he watched those movies because, like he says, he got control of the company once his dad died, which was 10 years prior, right? So
Mm,
he was I think they even mentioned like snowboarding through life, right? He wasn't
mhm.
taking things seriously, you know. And I like the way he describes his dad too. Never went to McDonald's, wasn't made for the 21st century. Yet his number one magazine was Reader's Digest.
Yeah.
Or TV Digest. No, TV Digest. There you go. Number
TV
one magazine.
Guide.
TV.
Something.
Yeah, TV Digest. Um,
Yeah, I mean, I think I like his character because he's very vain. He's a very materialistic sort of character, and you could initially see the story as being a guy who, as soon as his face is disfigured and he loses his good looks, that his whole life starts to fall apart. But really, it goes beyond that to say that it's really about this accident causing him to be. What's the word? It's just like not being open to losing something gracefully in terms
yeah,
of losing Penelope Cruz's character. What was her name?
Sophia.
Sophia. And so in terms of losing Sophia, he couldn't deal with the fact that she might be able to look beyond his face and actually love him.
Yeah,
He
yeah,
becomes overly focused and almost traumatized by the fact that if he isn't good looking anymore, then who's gonna love him? Who should love him if he doesn't have his good looks? But if he had actually tried and talked to her as a human being, she could have been able to get past it and actually
yeah.
have a
Post
relationship with
accident.
him.
Yeah, post accident.
But he never gives her that chance. So it's so telling that the moment he chooses to splice his dream life with his real life is the moment that after the nightclub, he gets too drunk, he insults his friends.
Yeah, Jason Lee.
Yeah, he sort of scares her away. She runs down the street. Unironically, she sort of like runs away at the end of the night. And so it's at that point that he decides that he wants to go into the dream. When really, if he had tried to pick himself up and fix himself and try to live with this new way of life, he could have actually been with Sophia.
Yeah, it's just so bizarre how like the relationship works between David Ames and Sophia. Like they're like she likes him, but she doesn't like him for the right. no, I mean, sorry, I misspoke. She doesn't like him for the wrong reasons. The money, the fame, what he
Yeah,
has. Like she actually likes him as a person.
right,
And later on, after the accident, he can't like sort of get beyond his face, kind of.
right,
He kind
yeah.
of crumbles under his own weight of the emotional like trauma of the accident and then also like the disfigurement. When yeah, you're right. If he was just himself and he didn't go to the club with the mask, right? And he was just him and not the new guy, as
Hmm.
Jason Lee's character says, Brian Shelby. As Brian Shelby says, this new guy is shit. All right. Like the way he puts it to him in the club. Like if he was just himself, he probably would have got Sophia, you know?
Yeah, it might have happened. And also, yeah, I mean, after the car accident takes place a day, not like a few hours after he leaves Sophia, which he just met the night before. So it could have like not even have been a relationship at all. They could have like realized they don't like each other. But the
Yeah.
thing is that there was that potential there. when you just sort of
Yeah,
meet somebody for the first time and you just feel something you don't feel of 99.9% of
yeah,
the rest of humanity.
I know. Jeez.
But yeah,
And
and yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say, so going back to the opening shot, where
Hmm.
we open through the skies of New York in an aerial shot, and then we go down to David's apartment.
Hmm.
You can hear like I guess Sophia's voice, right? Or is that like
Yeah,
through
definitely.
through the sky, right? She's like, "Open your eyes."
Yeah, you could
Open
make
your
the
eyes.
argument that the dream, his lucid dream, when he's been after he's been frozen, starts at that point and not later in the movie, like his guy tells him or tech support.
That's true. Yeah, and then like just them clearing out Times Square, him running in the nightmare. He wakes up. Julie
And
Giovanni.
and to tie it back into earlier episodes, but that's very 8.5, right? The initial
Dude,
dream sequence.
yes, I was dude. I was about to say this movie. After I had seen La Dolce Vita and 8.5 for the first time, I was like, man, that's like Vanilla Sky. Like you
Yeah.
look like that feeling of like what's real, what's not, the playboy archetype, searching for more,
Hmm.
searching for like romance, you know. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Like it's so strange how like the events after the Times Square dream sequence unfold and how he picks up Brian Shelby, Jason Lee's character, who, in my opinion, is my favorite character. That's my favorite character in the movie, Brian Shelby, because he has
Yeah.
so many good taglines, like quotes, like the sour. What was it? The sweet is not as sweet without the sour, something like that.
Yeah, I think it's about the bitter or something like that.
Something like that. Yeah, the
Yeah.
hopeless romantic writer,
Hmm.
who begs David not to fuck his dream girl, Julie Gianni, but he still does. you know
Right.
and he's the one responsible for bringing Sophia to the party and introducing them.
Yeah. I mean, I think if Tom Cruise hadn't played David, I think there people would see the flaws in that character much more easily because it's someone who's as charismatic
Yeah,
and
exactly.
traditionally good looking as Tom Cruise. People don't
Yeah,
really notice how shitty he is as a person.
yeah, he's not a good friend to Brian.
No, definitely
Like
not.
and I mean, Sophia raises a great point post party. She says to him, it's weird being at your party because everybody there depends on you in some way. They're
Yeah,
tied to him.
they're all being fake
They're all
because
being fake in some way. Yeah,
yeah,
it's so sad. And he starts
right.
discussing like who his real friends are, and I want to think that Brian is a real friend to him, and he actually cares about him.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, he probably did tell Julie at the party that David just referred to her as a fuck buddy.
Yeah,
He doesn't want to own up to it later, but I think you're right in that he is a genuine friend who cares about him.
yeah, and so many of these relationships like David has are just one way. Like with
Yeah.
Giuliani, Gianni, with Brian,
Hmm.
he's all he does is take, take, take. It's sad.
He has like a few genuine relationships. One of
He
them is
does
with Timothy Spall,
exactly.
Thomas Tibb,
I was about to bring that up. Yeah,
and Kurt Russell, who we later find out he plays a doctor psychologist.
yeah,
We later find out he's not real, but he
not
is one of the
really.
few genuine relationships he has with somebody who doesn't want something from him,
Yeah,
who talk to him as a human being.
a father figure.
Right.
Right? Modeled after Gregory Peck in To Kill a Mockingbird, right?
Right. Yeah.
So, but yeah, like Timothy Spall in this movie, brilliant, man.
Yeah.
People will read again. He has those lines like people will read again. There's a new nickname for you, Citizen Dildo,
Uh huh.
you know. But yeah, that's like one of those genuine relationships that he cherishes,
Right.
you know. And he's got the board, I think one if we want to go into conspiracy minded, like this movie is so like ahead of its time that I think now if it were made, like the ideas this movie like gives out, like the board could be like a significant like a sign that it could be like the Illuminati. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Or the gatekeepers to what images and ideas are let out into the world.
Yeah.
So strange and like Same thing with simulation theory. Like this movie, like simulation theory, that's exploded the past couple of years,
Yeah.
and it's got people thinking. And this movie is pretty much that simulation theory. Everything you've seen in some way is not you. You're just taking it in and creating that your own reality with it.
Right. And it's, I think, it's a product of how strange life feels to us now, right?
Yeah,
It feels emptier. It feels harder to understand and embrace because so much of the things we're surrounded by should make us happy. And I think this is something that the movie talks about, especially like in the opening scene, Tom Cruise is walking around an empty Times Square. And what's Times Square filled with? Ads, billboards for, I don't know, sports drinks, movies, TV shows, cigarettes, whatever. But these are all things that are just being sold to us that will never actually make us happy. And Tom Cruise finds out after the accident, it's not about how much money someone has or the things they have. The things that he really wants but can't get is to be in love with another person. That's what
yeah,
really winds up wrecking his life at the end.
yeah. No, you're right. Yeah, that Times Square sequence and the images being thrown out there, and like the brief moment where we see Katie Holmes on a magazine cover. That's a
Oh
little
yeah,
strange. That is so creepy.
I didn't
That she
notice
just
that.
yeah, she just appears like on a magazine cover.
Yeah.
That's so creepy. And then like
Ah, she was popular back then.
no, she was, but it's just like weird because she ended up marrying the guy. It's
Yeah.
just bizarre. It's like this bizarre serendipity thing. I
Yeah,
don't
it's
know.
sort of incestuous. Yeah.
Yeah, but
There's also a picture of Penelope Cruz in her apartment with Javier Bardem.
is that him?
Yeah, there's one of them. They were in a movie earlier, like back in the '90s, together.
Really?
And yeah, and they're in a picture on the fridge. And yeah, they wound up getting married later.
Wait, does the picture of Javier Bardem, Sergio? That photo?
No, it's not him.
That's not
There's a
him.
picture where he's like standing next to Penelope Cruz.
Is she wearing a mask?
No, they're just like standing.
They're
There's
just
like a
standing? Ah,
yeah.
I gotta
Gotta
do
go
it.
back and see it. But yeah, I think they were in Hamon Hamon together.
Oh,
And
damn, that's awesome. Man,
but
that's
yeah,
so weird.
I mean, yeah, yeah, it's sort of incestuous. You're like, yeah, they're all part of the same circles.
Yeah. Ah, so bizarre. Yeah, like filled with ads and everything, and like it's just empty. Like I just picture like Cameron Crowe, like the amount of stress this movie probably brought on,
Think so?
like probably just like I don't know. I just picture like a lot of stress making this movie.
Well, the thing was that when it came out, it got a very mixed reception. It made its money back because it was Tom Cruise,
Yeah,
but they were marketing sort of like a Fatal Attraction, love
yeah.
triangle sort of thing, from what I've read.
No, it was more like a psychological thriller, like kind of like
Yeah,
with
like
this
yeah,
like sexiness to it.
because yeah, you can imagine the marketing department looking at this movie and being like, "How do we sell this?" To like, yeah, you know, like the average moviegoer, how do you sell this to them?
Dude, all I know is that this movie, when it came out, like people genuinely hated this movie.
Yeah,
A lot of people. I would bring up this movie like a couple years after in high school, and people would be like, "Oh, that movie's stupid. Like it's just a
yeah,
dream. That's it." But it's weird though how far we've come in terms of like movies and media when it comes to those like dream landscape. I think Inception changed a lot of that, like how they can tie like dreams and alternate realities and like to like bigger budget movies. You know what I mean? Like it's a little widely accepted now without irritating people.
well, I think this movie's different. Like,
Oh
there's
yeah,
that Edward G. Robinson movie, The Woman in the Window, when it
okay.
turns out like there's like a whole murder, there's like a whole mystery, but then at the end it turns out he wakes up in his armchair and he's like, "Oh, that was a dream." So people feel cheated when that happens because they were
Oh yeah,
emotionally invested in the story, and then when Edward G. Robinson's like, "Oh, it's a dream," and he smokes his pipe, people are like, "What the fuck is this?" But
yeah,
in this movie, the dream is part of the emotional experience, right? It never really cheats you out of anything you felt watching it.
yeah.
At the end, the ending, the last scene on the rooftop is the most emotional scene I can think of in all of what 21st century cinema, right? There's nothing that is that sentimental think it is sentimental, but it earns it, I think, and it still
No,
makes
it
me
does.
cry. I'll admit, it still makes me cry.
I would say, dude, I would say that entire last sequence is like such a riveting emotional moment. Like him going up in the elevator with tech support,
Yeah.
and him explaining, Noah Taylor explaining where the splice happens of the dream, and yeah, you are right. I'm not going to argue with you about that moment on the rooftop. It is pretty like it's one of the most, in my opinion, memorable like ending sequences to a movie.
Yeah,
I think it's
definitely.
because like the cinematography, the green screen sky,
Yeah, it's purposely very, very artificial.
very artificial. Yeah. And then Kurt Russell realizing, wait, I'm just a side character.
Yeah, I'm
You
not
know,
even
I,
real. I don't even
I'm
have
not
real
real. They're like,
daughters.
yeah, name your daughters. And he's like, I'm real, but he's
Yeah,
not real. And then like
right.
he thinks of Brian Shelby. Brian Shelby appears, and then finally Sophia, and then
And
like
that
that moment of choice.
yeah, that Sugar Russ. I'm still not sure how
Oh
to
yeah,
pronounce the
you're
name.
right. Yeah, yeah.
Um, that song that's playing, that's very it's hard to think of a word to describe that or any word to describe that song, but it's just for me, just it's very I don't know, it just gets into my heart and my emotional places. And it
No,
makes
you're
me
right.
feel things. It makes me feel like a sort of like a melancholy and
Yeah.
loss and sadness, but not in a bad way. It makes me
No.
glad I can feel those things.
Yeah.
And it gets in like the way that music does, it can just affect you immediately, right?
Yeah.
It can
I.
just
Yeah. No, you're right. I felt the same way too. I felt like you're coming out of something and you're not sad. There's this weird optimism that you're
yeah,
actually gonna wake up with David in this weird future,
right.
you know? And like, yeah, it's very bizarre. And I think I remember at the time the biggest controversial thing about the movie was with if they were gonna keep the 9/11 towers.
Oh yeah.
That was like the biggest like
Is there even a shot of them?
there is when he's on the roof about to jump and
Oh
he's
yeah.
looking out, like you could see them and they had
Mhm.
just gone down like 2 months prior.
Well, let me see when this movie came out.
It came out
Oh
December
yeah,
of
14th.
01.
Right, right.
Yeah, so and there was like some theories that he was standing on the World Trade Center. But,
Oh
like, I
yeah.
remember it was, like, this movie and then Spider-Man, Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Like, the big thing was that, like, they show the Twin Towers. It's one of the final films to show the Twin Towers, you
Well,
know?
yeah, the movie was probably done by the time 9/11
Yeah,
happened,
it
right?
was, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, you
And the
can't.
studio, from what I was reading, was that the studio wanted Cameron Crowe to take out the towers, like, remove them artificially. And he was like,
Mhm.
"No, we're gonna keep him in." And I'm glad he did though, because it's
Yeah.
just like if you know your history, you'd be like, "Oh man, there they are." Like that meant something at the time.
Yeah, it's something like in terms of the story, this would have taken place before that happened, right? So there's no real point to taking them out.
Yeah.
And it's like, I mean, people aren't gonna be like offended or like maybe back
No.
then they were.
Yeah, people were like, "What? You're gonna keep him in?" And like, no, it's cool that he kept him in. And like, I just want to get to the side characters here, like Tilda Swinton.
Okay, well, let's finish talking about the last scene though. It's just,
Oh yeah, last scene. My bad. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah.
it just, what am I gonna say about it? I mean, it's like what I said before. I mean, I just think that most filmmakers aren't afraid more than anything, more than making a bad movie. They just don't want to look uncool in front
Yeah.
of the audience.
Yeah.
So this scene, for me at least, represents like a big swing, really going for the bleachers in terms of just putting it all out there. They're like, sure, Cameron goes gonna be like, yeah, I'm gonna play a sappy Icelandic sad song, and then my main character is gonna see this light for the last time, but she's a fantasy, and they're gonna be saying these nakedly obvious, loving things to each other, like I'll find you again. I'll see you in the
Yeah.
next life.
Yeah.
We're both cats.
They were both
Things
cats.
that
Yeah.
can be put on a Hallmark card and are very corny. But for me,
Yeah.
relish those kinds of things because no
Yeah.
one else does them.
Yeah.
And sometimes the corniest thing you can say is the most obvious, but it's also the most honest thing.
Honest thing. Yeah,
And
that's a good word to use.
yeah,
It's honest. It's like Jerry Maguire, you know? It's like where you know where this movie's going, but you still take the ride
yeah,
and you feel good because it
right.
opens you up and it's like it's okay to feel like these melodramatic emotions because sometimes that's what life is. Like it's okay to accept the corniness, you
Yeah.
know?
It's
You
like,
have to. You have to accept the corniness or else you're gonna fucking die a shriveled up bitter
yeah,
racist.
like bitter, lonely, cynical, and ironic. That's
Yeah.
like what's waiting for millennials. We're just like we just feed off irony and cynicism and thinking everything is shit and meaningless.
Yeah.
There's nothing to that philosophy. It's nihilistic. It's meaningless. It
Yeah.
won't help you when you're dying and alone.
Yeah,
Um,
you're right. You know, you're right. I agree.
but
Yeah.
yeah, like Cameron Crowe again, like all his movies, it's like in Say Anything, it has
Yeah.
John Cusack going to a girl's house and then
Yeah.
putting in a stereo.
Radio, you know, yeah.
Yeah, and like all his movies have those really corny. I feel like I shouldn't use the word corny, but they're just like very emotionally naked moments.
They are emotional. You got me thinking of Singles. And
I
there's
haven't
a
seen Singles
scene,
yet.
there's like a scene. Oh, you haven't seen it?
No, not yet.
Oh, damn it. Okay. But there's a scene where I think it's one of the main characters, she's cleaning her toilet with the guy's shirt that she likes.
Hmm.
She doesn't realize it. She picks it up. But yeah, there's just those little moments of like human connection,
Yeah,
you
or like
know?
in Almost Famous, after they're singing Tiny Dancer on the
Yeah.
bus,
Great
and
moment.
then William tells Penny Lane, "I have to go home now," and then she just sort of does this like hippie thing where she like makes him close his eyes. She says, "You are home,"
You are home.
and it's such a
Yeah.
I don't know. It's like even in this movie, there's that moment after Tom Cruise leaves Sophia's apartment, and she's sort of like pumping her fists and jumping around
That's right.
because she met him, and no one else would do that. I can't imagine anyone else, even in cliche rom coms, who would have like the female lead pumping her fist and
Pumping her
jumping up
fist.
and down because they met
Yeah.
this person. When I
He
mean,
does like he does such a great job of like evoking that emotion, like bringing out that emotion in the audience. Like I was feeling like, oh yeah, I know that feeling. It's such a good feeling of when you meet somebody and you're just like, dude, they're cool. You know what I mean? I could get along with this person. You know?
yeah,
No.
I mean, it just is kind of filmmaking and vision, I guess is what you would call it. You don't see anymore. You just see a bunch of guys trying to be cool.
Yeah, I mean, you do, but I mean, like,
I mean, like, where are the great romances now? Like, where are the great romantic movies? I mean, like, I can remember Phantom Thread, but
oh,
beyond
oh,
that,
yeah, La La Land. I think
maybe,
La La Land has it, dude.
eh.
La La Land has that feel. This is like a different type of feel. It's like a melodrama from like the 50s or 60s. You know, it has that like it's okay to feel this way. You know,
Yeah,
and but I also think that he's like a product of the time, like during that era,
yeah,
late 90s into the 2000s. Like the world was so different. I don't know how to explain, but like the world was like it America was different. Like anything pre 9/11, like 90s into like up until like '01,
hmm,
there was a kind of optimism. The economy was good, you know. Um,
well, I think he's, I mean, not to put labels on it, but I think Cameron Crowe's technically a baby boomer, right?
Technically a baby boomer. Yeah. And that era
I
for
mean,
baby boomers, it was very optimistic. You know, they're
yeah,
putting money into like companies, the tech boom, .com boom. You know what I mean?
yeah, I think he was like half Generation X, half baby boomer. He's like in that middle awkward
Yeah.
period.
He's in the middle. He's more, I think I picture him more Gen X, like with singles.
Yeah,
Movies
definitely,
about like,
yeah.
that movie's about Gen Xers and the grunge era in Seattle.
Right.
You know?
But yeah, he's like in that, like you said before, like there's not really like a more optimistic about American culture. Like you said, he's always sort of like, even in this movie, like a lot of the music choices on the soundtracks feel like dad rock. It's got like REM,
Yeah, nowadays it would be, yeah,
Radiohead. It's got a
radio.
couple of Radiohead songs that just came out when the movie came out.
Yeah, Kid A had just come out the year prior,
Right. I think
so
there's a
it was a
song
big deal.
from their next album. I forget what it was
I
called.
might be wrong. I might
Yeah.
be wrong.
And what's the album called? Insomniac or something?
Amnesiac.
Amnesiac. That's
That's
right.
pretty much like outtakes and B-sides of Kid A.
Yeah.
They just released, but good album. But yeah,
But
like what?
I'm sorry. Yes, like I
Oh,
was going to say that he is not embarrassed by picking songs that are like from the biggest bands, the most popular musicians at the time, like REM and U2. Who
yeah, I think
and
Jeff Buckley too.
Yeah, Jeff Buckley. He's not afraid to be in love with songs and music that are very not commercially driven, but very mainstream.
Yeah, yeah. No, I agree with you. And it works though. Like the music
Yeah.
choices, they like the soundtrack is it's almost like the soundtrack to his life,
Hmm.
right? That's his life. It's not a character in the movie. Like the soundtrack isn't a character. It's just like that's what he feels. The character feels. It's a part of David Ames.
Yeah, it's very much a part of the character in his life.
Yeah, and it's crazy when you look at soundtracks back then, 20, like 30 years ago,
Yeah.
like the choices of soundtracks. Like, don't you remember? Like, this movie brought up the idea of like, don't you remember when movies had like soundtracks? Like, it was a big deal, like to buy the soundtrack to the movie. You know what I mean? Like, it was like, and it wasn't like a score or anything. Maybe a couple tracks of the score, right? But it had like big name artists on there, and you would buy the CD because you heard it in the movie, and there it would be that retail selling point.
Hmm.
I think
Right.
the last movie that did that successfully, in my opinion, was Black Panther. Like it just
Yeah.
that thing took off. Like the soundtrack was bigger than the movie, and I love the
Yeah, I
soundtrack to
guess.
that movie. It's such a good soundtrack to the movie, but yeah, like I think that I've been thinking about it. I think America, like, we need to go back to that time period of like somewhere the 90s into the early 2000s where like there was like this sense of like optimism, I think, because of the dot-com boom, right? And also like because of the economical fallout, the optimism there
That's
was.
that's interesting. So I remember talking to a man who's like in his mid 40s, and the perspective I got from him is that his life was just going swimmingly until 9/11,
Yeah,
and then everything changed for him.
for him. Yeah.
Yeah, but you could extrapolate that to a certain segment of the population, that people's lives where they thought everything was going great and perfect and things were only going to get better until 9/11 woke them up.
Yeah.
And not only that, but everything that happened after that, the
Yeah,
Iraq
the fallout.
War, Afghanistan,
The
the
list goes on and on. Yeah.
the recession, 2000,
Recession.
2008, it
Yeah.
just kept getting worse and worse. When they were at a point previously to that where they thought the sky is the limit, it's only going to get better. It's
Yeah.
the roaring 20s again, it's the 50s, it's the post war era. But reality isn't like that. But the thing is that I think that moment woke them up to the reality of the world, which
Yeah.
just that it's constantly in chaos. And
Yeah. And
yeah,
movies that came, after that. You did mention like War of the Worlds, like in 2005. Like movies started to change and started to reflect the times.
mhm. Right. And then you can tell the movie he made after this, Cameron Crowe, Elizabethtown,
Yeah, Elizabethtown.
it just was completely disconnected from what audiences wanted, right? And even that, I like Elizabethtown. I think he has a lot of good moments.
Yeah.
But I think the movie, the way the public treated this movie and critics treated this movie, sort of threw him off. I think it affected him a lot that this movie wasn't received as well.
That's another point I was going to get to. I think the fallout and the backlash of this movie critically, I
Hmm.
think it kind of, it did something to him, I think. I think
Yeah,
he kind of lost faith in something. Maybe his life changed. I don't know. I know he got divorced in 2010.
yeah.
from his wife. But I
I think,
mean,
like you said, he just made three. I mean, let me look at his filmography. But
yeah,
yeah, he made Jerry Maguire, which made all money, got a lot of praise, got Oscar nominations. They made Almost Famous, which got more praise. He got an Oscar for best screenplay. He got all these accolades for that movie, and it's obviously his best movie in my opinion, especially the extended edition. Just like I think a masterpiece.
no, yeah, really good movie, man. Yeah,
Yeah. And then you get to Vanilla Sky, which is like, Tom Cruise is in it. It's a
yeah,
remake. It's better to call it like an adaptation of a previously made movie.
yeah,
And it was a step out of his comfort zone, right? Even though it's very much one of his movies, it's not something he's done before. And he gets all this pushback. So he goes, "What do I do now? I should just go back to making romantic comedies, right?"
yeah. But
And
then, like,
yeah,
yeah,
it didn't work out as well the second time, right?
yeah, and then also audiences changed
Right.
after 9/11. They wanted something different, you know,
Yeah.
something a little bit more humorous. And I think that's why someone like Judd Apatow's like 40-Year-Old Virgin, Knocked Up. That's why they took off. There's much more of a cruder take on the romantic side. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a bit more cynical,
Cynical.
disenchanted.
Yeah, it
It,
just changed.
yeah, it just sort of seemed like it hurts too much to be this genuine and open-hearted.
Yeah. No, yeah, I agree. Cameron Crowe hit 3 good ones in a row,
Uh-huh.
and the times changed, man. He was kind of like a musician who put out 3 great straight albums,
Yeah.
you know, and then things changed, the sound went to somewhere else and he couldn't keep up,
Yeah.
you know.
I just think he was like so in line with what audiences were wanted in the 90s, especially that when things changed, he couldn't really adapt. He couldn't really change his voice to fit into what the world was turning into.
Yeah. No, it's sad.
Yeah,
And
and even then, I still like We Bought a Zoo a lot.
oh yeah, you did mention that one time. We bought his. I like that one too. His
Yeah,
movies still feel good. Like we bought his. I did not see Aloha. I know
yeah,
Bradley Cooper comes out, but like I know he did like the Pearl Jam documentary as well.
hmm,
But oh, side characters: Tilda Swinton,
sure. Uh-huh.
amazing. Michael Shannon in his first big role
Yeah, it's
as
not
the
that
cop.
big.
I know, but it's still him on the big screen,
I
man.
like how he like follows them up to like the top floor where they're meeting with the life extension people, and he's sort of like looking over their shoulder at the
He
screen.
wants to go with them, and they're like, "No, he can
Yeah,
stay."
yeah, you can stay.
You're like, what the like? I just like that. I mean, obviously Jason Lee, but Johnny Galecki from
Yeah,
Roseanne, Big Bang
yeah,
Theory.
right.
I forgot he was in this movie. I saw him when David Ames pulls up to the office building. He's like, he's gonna move his car or something.
Well, he's like his assistant.
He's one of his assistants, and like, I'm like, is that dude? Is that Johnny Galecki? Holy
Oh,
crap! You know. Uh,
yeah, Kurt Russell, who most people wouldn't cast him as a psychologist, but
no,
I think he's a good choice. I think
no,
yeah, like it turns out that all these choices that in the beginning seem sort of contrived and corny,
yeah.
they wind up being a part of the dream, so they make sense, right? Like Kurt Russell, who else would you get to play your dad but Kurt Russell? That would just seem like an easy choice, right? Like
Yeah,
if I could cast somebody, Kurt Russell would be one of the first choices.
yeah,
But yeah, like I said, who else we got? Timothy Spall, who gives one of the best performances I've seen in All or Nothing, that Mike Lee movie. Just great, great stuff. Such
yeah.
a great actor.
No, he is very like versatile, British.
Yeah.
I don't know, like the humor. He carries a humorous like feel to him, but yeah, like
He just like has like such an open face.
there you go. That's what it is.
You can't really like help but be sympathetic to whatever is going on with him.
I think it's his teeth. I think it might be his
I think
teeth.
it's his eyes, just like
And
his
his
eyes
eyes.
looking up at you. It's like,
Like Tim Roth, like Tim Roth's little brother. I don't know how to
yeah,
explain.
yeah,
Like you'd be related to Tim Roth in some way.
yeah. Like Tim Roth was sort of like the troublemaker
Yeah,
or something. And then
yeah,
like Timothy Spall's like the more reserved older brother or something.
yeah. Man, it's so weird. If I were to ask like Jason Lee one question, I would be like, what was it like kissing Penelope Cruz? Because like Jason Lee at the time, like I
Hmm.
don't I think the
Does he even
small
kiss her?
he does, yeah.
Is
In
it in
that
the?
sequence in that sequence when David is chasing them after the club and REM's playing,
Oh yeah, and the like he's imagining when
he's
kiss.
imagining,
Yeah,
and Jason Lee kisses her. But Jason Lee was like a skater, you know, and
yeah.
somehow got into movies and then started doing big movies and then did My Name Is Earl, you know.
Well, he
This
did all those Kevin Smith movies.
Yeah, he would show up like as like a cameo, like
No, I think he was like big in
oh,
Mallrats,
wait,
right? He had like a
Clerks,
big
not
role.
Clerks, Mallrats.
Yeah,
There you go, Mallrats.
chasing Amy.
Yeah, Chasing Amy. There you
Yeah,
go. Yeah. But he was like he just went from like a skater to an actor, and then he's on TV like with a big show, like My Name is Earl. I
yeah,
just wanted to ask him like, what was it like? You just it's probably just like this surreal experience for him going from like here and there. Like he was in like Kevin Smith movies, you know, like
yeah.
Clerks, not Clerks, Mallrats, one of my favorite movies.
Really?
You know, yeah, I really enjoyed him in Mallrats. So good, man.
Okay.
And then Ben Affleck is just awful in that movie. He's such a bad person. Like, ugh, God. But yeah, anyway, the score, wanted to get to the score by Nancy Wilson. Great score. Nancy Wilson of Heart, Cameron Crowe's
Okay.
wife at the time. She uses like pianos, strings, acoustic guitar, drum
The whole
machine.
arsenal. Yeah,
Just, just the sound she was getting. I really enjoyed it. Fits the
yeah.
movie. Fits the
If
movie.
it, I mean, yeah, I think that's probably what they were going for. Yeah, it just it really bridges those scenes where you can't choose one of the REM songs or Pearl Jam or something.
I know. But at the time though, Boris, at the time though, REM was it, man. I think they had just broken up too or something.
No, they had more years to go. They had,
Did they?
yeah, they had like 10 more years of the band.
God damn it. I thought they dismantled or something.
He uses Wild Honey, which no one likes, but I love
Oh
that
yeah,
U2 song.
that's right.
And
You're a U2 guy, right? You like U2?
yeah, I'm a U2 guy. Yeah,
I
I
know
love
you.
U2.
Yeah, I like U2 too. It's a Mexican thing. Mexicans love U2.
Yeah, it's one of those bands. Smiths,
Yeah, it's up there.
Joy
It's
Division.
Depeche Mode.
Yeah, Radiohead for sure.
Oh yeah, Radiohead. Yeah. But anyway, man, I just like when watching this movie, it's just one of those movies where it's like you start to question your life,
Yeah,
you know, and the choices you made, you know. And I think that's what good movies do, you know. That's what really good movies do. And I hope, you know, someone comes along like a Cameron Crowe. I don't think it will happen just because the way the world's changed so much, you know.
hmm,
But we do need that optimism back, I think, or at least some sort of like take on reality that is not so harsh, you know what I mean? Something that reminds you that it's okay to feel certain emotions that involve love or confusion, you know?
yeah. I mean, yeah, these are the kinds of ideas, like you said, like how like about how fleeting life is,
Yeah.
how a connection to another human being is so rare and hard to find. These are things that you can't really approach in a way that's more abstract or, I mean, I don't want to say subtle, but I mean, these is easiest way to deal with these kinds of things.
Yeah.
The way that Cameron Crowe does is, which is just like very obvious, just saying it, playing a sad song,
Yeah. Yeah.
showing a pretty image, just like it's about just being out there with it. And just I think, like you said, yeah, I don't know if this kind of filmmaker will reoccur again because people are so caught up in being not empty, but they're just sort of what's the word? Disconnected, I guess, from other
Yeah.
people and from
Yeah.
and not want like I don't even know where people express genuine emotion anymore.
Um,
I mean, like music, but even then, so much of music now is just so cynical and so much about just the physical, textural side of things, and not so much about the emotional. How do I find a word for it?
I know what you're trying to say.
Yeah.
I think there's still people who are genuinely honest and genuinely with emotions. Like what we're doing right now, there's still people, in interviews and stuff that are projecting what they actually feel, you know.
Mm,
I just think maybe the medium has changed, you know. It's a little bit of both. I think the medium's changed and I think people have changed. I think like our generation is so different than like Gen Xers and baby boomers, you know. And same thing with Gen Z. We fall more in line with Gen Z, as in with like emotions. Like we're kind of a little hard to process emotions, to accept emotions, to convey emotions.
yeah.
You know, I don't know. I guess time will tell as we get older. But you did bring up a great point earlier, where you're like the millennial way of being bitter and dying on your deathbed alone. Like you're gonna want to have those moments of like corniness and cheesiness and
Yeah.
reflection. I agree with you. I don't want to die like in some ironic meme way by myself.
Yeah, like I mean, like the pandemic now, there's a lot of people who were still going out to parties and going out to eat and going to the beach and going on vacation or whatever. And the general sentiment is I'm not responsible for someone else's health or their life, essentially. So the thing is that we've become so disconnected from other human beings as other human beings are, which is just like they're the same as us. They have feelings, they have thoughts, they have ideas, and we are also responsible for other people's lives. But the sentiment now is just so
Yeah,
selfish and insular that I'm
yeah,
not responsible for their lives over for that guy over there in Germany or
yeah. No,
Zimbabwe or whatever. But they're just as human as I am.
no, you're correct, and I agree with you. I feel that, yeah, the pandemic has shown you
Yeah,
know that side of humanity. And it's also the internet as well, like how we experience things, like like it's also like our culture and the way technology has played a role, how disconnected we are, how we think we can say something to say to somebody online or in person or in passing, and we just assume that it won't hurt them, you know
yeah,
or we assume that like it doesn't resonate with them, but it's different. Some things resonate with people, some people are more sensitive than others. And but yeah, like I agree with you, like we do have to sort of get back to that, like that like we're all connected in some way.
yeah.
We all tap into the same wavelength of emotion, of like of compassion. That's how society works, just compassion and like some sort of idea of like sympathy.
Right. I
I
mean,
don't
used
know.
to, I guess.
Right. And I don't know, I think this movie, what Cameron Crowe did with Vanilla Sky, is like so amazing. Watching it like 20 years later, like in this December it's turning 20, and like it's just really refreshing. And like it gave me like hope. It's such a hopeful movie. you know
In a way, yeah.
it's so like it gives you like this feeling of like, man, like this might be a dream and it might not be a dream, but like you got to live your life and be like kind to people, and you got to like not wipe your butt with like relationships, whether with it be a loved one or like a friend. You got to care about people because it's the little things.
Yeah. That's it. Essentially. Yeah, I mean, who else but us can make another movie like this, right? Um, Moonlight,
Yeah, oh yeah.
that's completely unafraid to be emotional and sentimental.
Yeah, that movie, I mean, that Moonlight is just one
And
of those.
yeah, Beale Street too, right?
Oh, if Bill Street could talk. I mean,
Yeah,
yeah, that's Barry Jenkins, though, as a filmmaker, man. That guy, he's tapped into some sort of like past American psyche that, like, when like, when I watch his movies,
mhm,
I actually get very like I feel something. and that's a good thing. It's refreshing. Like it's a good refreshing take to go. It's okay to feel this way, to accept things for what they are, and to accept, love or something. I don't know, man. It's yeah,
Yeah, that's it. I mean, yeah, those kinds of movies are rare,
yeah.
obviously.
But yeah, anyway, dude, any final thoughts on Vanilla Sky? Anything you want to add?
Nope.
I can't believe Cameron Crowe got Paul McCartney, man, to do the song.
Yeah,
That is such a cool song. I love that. Also, the end credits of they do the sky
yeah,
and like the white lettering.
like the
So
Monet
cool.
painting. Yeah,
Beautiful, man. Monet paintings. So cool. But yeah. Anyway, hopefully next week we meet in person. We can do the review of the Fellini box set, new edition. And let me tell you, man, I've been going through this box set, dude, and Criterion does not mess around, dude. Good looking box set so far, but we'll have a review for that, next week, you know. So
okay.
yeah, it'll be great, man.
Any final thoughts then?
Uh, you know, any final thoughts? I mean, just in general on the movie, I mean, it's the little things that count, as cheesy as that sounds. Also, Cameron Diaz, really awesome in this role. Felt like we kind of skipped over her, but
Yeah,
good, refreshing role because she kind of went from comedy, and this is like one of her like more serious, twisted roles. It's cool to see her like
yeah,
that.
she does a
But,
good job.
yeah, but and to quote Brian Shelby, I am Frank, and Frank must go.
Uh, all right, bye, everybody.
All right, guys, thank you for listening. Tune in next time as we talk Fellini box set and maybe another movie.
Bye.
Bye, guys.